So for anyone who is new to EPIP, welcome. We're excited to have you today on our webinar. We hope you'll come back for more. EPIP stands for Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, and we are a national network of foundation professionals, social entrepreneurs, and other change makers who strive for excellence in the practice of philanthropy. We're committed to developing emerging leaders and building a just, equitable, and sustainable society together. We provide a platform for our community to connect with each other, to learn and practice leadership skills, and also to inspire emerging ideas in the social sector. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about how these things take shape, answer any questions you have, see if membership is right for you, and just talk to you a little bit more about who you are and hopefully what you're excited about in terms of EPIP's opportunities for you. You can reach out to me via email at biz@epip.org. That's biz@epip.org. And I'll be excited to have further conversations. Coming down the line, we have our next Wednesday webinar on May 25. It's going to be focused on worker cooperatives. So the title of the next webinar is Poverty Alleviation and Systems Change with Worker Cooperatives. We have a great panel of folks coming from both the worker cooperative side as well as the organizing kind of supportive side of getting worker cooperatives together, and also the funding side. So if you want to learn more about what worker cooperatives are, how they work, how they affect big systems change, and how funders can get involved effectively, we welcome you to join us on that webinar. You can find it on our website at epip.org/events. All of our upcoming events from national as well as the local events in the local chapters are all on there. So definitely check it out, see if there's something coming up that strikes your fancy. We're also busily preparing for the annual conference. It's going to be in September this year in Baltimore. The theme is Elevate, and we just recently published the content tracks. So if you go to our website, you see here, epip.org/2016_national_conference. You'll see it at the top if you just go to epip.org. Click on it and let us know what you think of the content tracks. Let us know if you have questions. We'd love to get you involved in session submissions or any part of the conference that you're excited about. So please let me know if you have questions about that. Few housekeeping pieces. We are going to be using the question box today as a way to communicate during the presentation. So if you have any technical difficulties with the sound or the ability to see the slides, just type into the question box and I'll do my best to help you troubleshoot. If you have comments as the presentation goes along or content questions, just drop them in the question box, and if you put them in as the questions pop up for you, that way they'll be there when we get to the question and answer period at the end. And if there's clarification that we can help with during the presentation, we'll do that. The polls and questions are anonymous, so we'll have a couple polls pop up throughout the presentation. Both the questions and the polls are anonymous, so we encourage you to share honestly. Folks won't know who you are, what you shared, but we'd love to have your voices incorporated into the conversation today. If you're following on social media and you want to tag anything you learn, EPIP Webinar is the hashtag that we use for the conversations on social media about our webinar series. We are recording the webinar so it can be in our archive. And at the very end, when the webinar ends, you'll be encouraged to complete a post-webinar survey. It's only a few questions, and your feedback is really helpful for planning the sessions that we have coming down the line, as well as helping to make sure that you guys are getting what you need from this program. Also, I want you to make sure you have a paper and pen. There's going to be a chance to use them to really start to develop action steps and get yourself charging up the career mountain with your side projects. So if you don't have a paper and pen available right now, grab them. We will not necessarily know what you write on them, but I think it'll be both fun and a chance for you to really make the most of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome Mathias to EPIP and to today's webinar. entertainingly, we're actually sitting next to each other, pretending that we're in different places. So I'm getting the chance to see him live as we get ready to kick off the webinar. Mathias is a wonderful person. If you get the chance to meet him, I recommend that you do. We've done work together at places like Digital Democracy, where I used to work, as well as I've been a participant in some of his trainings. And I have always had a lot of respect for his facilitation and also his ability to help people bring new perspectives and see things from new vantage points as they are looking at both opportunities and challenges in their business, in their social mission work, in their impact work, in their personal lives, really anything. So he is an incredibly creative and smart man that we are excited to have as part of our webinar series. I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what to expect from the webinar, though he'll get into that as well. Outside of my experience working with Mathias, he has worked with lots of bigger companies as well. He's worked with Bloomberg, Google, New York Times, Hyper Island, Holsti, and many others. And he's helped them think about how to bring ideas to life visually, how to help clients think beyond tactical solutions, how to get unstuck, and how to build sustainable plans and organizations on top of purpose and values. So we're excited to get a chance to sit with him today and think about side projects as a way to get ourselves unstuck in our own career paths. And it's going to be both a chance to hear stories and think creatively, but also examples and tools to help you optimize your time. Our encouragement for you is to really bring an open mind and think about how this can help you hone and improve your ability to dedicate energy to the things you're most excited about or you think are the most pressing. It may not answer all of your questions. There's definitely not going to be recommendations about which side project you should do. We believe you may have that answer tucked inside of you. But if you'd like to learn more about specific philanthropy-related goals or side projects or kind of skill sets, I would encourage you to look at the new blog post on the EPIP website from Manuela, who is a New York EPIP chapter leader and recently put up a great post about building the bridge between your role maybe as a program associate or in the lower ranks of philanthropy to becoming a program officer. That's a great tool for you. Today is really focused on thinking about new frameworks and new tools and providing you with hopefully something that you can think about your own ideas and projects more creatively with. So I am going to turn things over to Mathias and welcome him to present.
I am unmuted. Now we can hear. Let's see. And is it main screen? Good. I think we're here. Do you see my screen? Can you see?
Yeah, that's your screen. And you're audible.
I'm audible. Excellent. And I will just make this full screen. Good. Yeah, so now I can see the sidebar now. So if you see things that pop up, this is kind of taken over. But I think it's okay.
I'll run the sidebar.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you first of all for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm always honored when people are giving me some of their attention and time to listen to what I have to say. So I take that very seriously and appreciate it very much. So today we'll talk about side projects as a way of advancing careers, and I think I'll share just one thing about myself, two things about myself. I'm from Legoland, also known as Denmark, and I started my first company when I was 15, and have been pretty much an entrepreneur since then, which is now more than half of my entire life. And so it's a little bit weird to be talking about career because I don't really have a traditional career. But I think it's a good way of thinking about how this whole webinar works, that I'm coming from a world that is not your world. Like, I mean, even the things I have in my life that are career-ish are not from philanthropy. They're from very like corporate, creative, agency, marketing world. So like a different world. And I want to acknowledge the fact that I don't know about your world. But I'm coming in with something, I'm presenting an idea, and I hope that together we can kind of reach from both sides and figure out how, or if and how, some of these ideas might be valuable to you. Because I think there is value in it, but I think we will need to both be leaning from each side. But that's all I will say about me. No, I'll say one more thing. If you want to know more about me, my website has a lot. I share a lot of stuff about myself. So there's a whole rabbit hole you can dig into there. So no need to talk about it here. The agenda for today, I will go through these 4 things: how to win the Tour de France, what is a good side project, and I'll mention some of the side projects that I have done as examples and how they have failed and succeeded in various ways. We'll do a little bit of a workshop to get you thinking about your own work and potential side projects for you. And in the end, we will reflect a little bit on what we've learned and debrief together and see how well did we manage to make this meeting happen across the divide. My main hope, my main intent is if you will walk away with one specific action, one little thing you will want to try to do in the coming week, then I think that it is a success. So that's the level of ambition that I have. I hope you'll be inspired to find one thing that matters to you and go and do that. So how to win, but before we actually jump into that, I would love if you would just post in that comment box, because I think it's good to start from a place of like, what is it that we want to explore? Rather than starting from the place of career and where do I want to be, like starting from a place of passion and curiosity. So I put this question here: what are the big or small questions you want to explore in your work? It doesn't need to be unique. It doesn't need to be special. It can be hundreds of other people that are already working on this question. But something like a question or challenge that is personal to you. So if you post them into the comment box, we can use that. I can look at them with the question box. Yeah, and then we can use that also as we go on. So start thinking about that. What's something that you're curious to explore, regardless of what your current title or job is. Now, a little bit of storytelling. How to win the Tour de France. For those of you who don't know what the Tour de France is, it is a major cycling race. It looks pretty much like this. There are people in very tight jerseys on bikes, and they ride these bikes for literally thousands of miles over the course of about a month in primarily the Alps of France. It is an extremely endurance team sport where they cycle up the hill, down the hill, up another hill, as I said, for about a month. It's relatively boring to watch, even though it's live televised, because all you really see are people on bikes biking up and down hills. But there is a huge drama in this. It is fascinating in many ways if you look beyond just the people on bikes. And one of these, I would say, epic scale dramas is the historic battle between the United Kingdom and France, 2 of the countries in the Western world, nation states that have had the most controversies, wars, disagreements and conflicts between them over the last 1,000 years or so. And the Tour de France is, as you can guess from the name, a French idea, but it is also an international sports competition that has been going for about 107 years now. And in the first 100 years of the Tour de France, a British team had never, ever won. For 100 years, people had been biking this race, and never had a British team managed to succeed. Obviously, that would have to change. So what do? You create a team sponsored by Sky, called Sky Team. You don't get the most expensive riders, you know, but you need to start somewhere. And what they did was they hired a really, really great coach, this guy. His name is Dave Brailsford. And he said, I'll make this happen. We will win the Tour de France. Doesn't have to be the best riders. We don't need to go and buy superstars. I can make this team work really well. Give me 5 years and I will give you a winner. So Dave set out to work, and he started basically saying, like, well, what can we improve here? What can we take with this relatively mediocre team we've just started? What can we improve? And he started just looking over basic things like nutrition and food. How could we optimize? And he said, it doesn't need to be a revolution. All I want is like food that is 1% better for the riders. Just 1% more nutritious, more appropriate, served perhaps 30 minutes sooner if necessary. Whatever we can optimize 1% with the food. He also looked at the bike and he said, well, how can we, you know, make it lighter? He found some lighter tires. They spent just an extra minute or an extra 2 minutes fine-tuning the bike every day. And even little things that, you know, honestly, in my opinion, like it's like completely almost irrational. But he said, like, let's put less paint on the bike because that will make it lighter. The things where our normal tendency is like, that cannot possibly make the difference. But he was like, let's do it. Some of the more innovative ideas, he began looking at the bus. So again, this is a race that actually goes through the Alps, and so every night they go to a new place and they drive in this bus. And he was like, what can I optimize with the bus? So he, instead of having just seats in the bus, he put actual beds, like live, flat beds in the bus. Nobody had done that before. But that meant that as soon as the riders finished the race and they got to the bus, they could actually begin resting. And just to get 1% more rest than they did before. He also put a huge flagpole on top of the bus. You can't see it in this photo, but it basically helped when you have the finish area after the day's race, where it's like a chaos. You know, some 100 bike riders arrive at pretty much the same time, and they all have to find their bus, and it's new every day. And he was like, let's just put a big flagpole so they can look up, see the Sky Team bus, and go straight there. Maybe they will get 5 more minutes of rest. That's worth it. Then they also look outside of the normal. So during this month, they sleep in hotels every night. And he was like, well, anybody who has traveled and stayed in different hotels, like, it's always a mess to figure out the pillows. So why don't we bring our own pillows for the hotel, so that at least we have a consistent pillow experience. And by the way, we can find one that is, you know, hypoallergenic and, you know, ergonomically good. But at least it's consistent, just again to increase the rest 1%. He even went out of his way to teach his riders how to better wash their hands. I mean, these are adults. But he was like, well, if we can just wash our hands 1% better, we will have 1% less infection and 1% less sick days, and that might improve our training schedule up to the race. So completely outside of what you would consider anything with cycling. And the last example I will give is just tying it all together, having a great manifesto and putting it right there on the bike when you're sitting there on that bike for 5 hours every day, looking down, biking up the hill. This is what you see. You're reading this. This is the line between winning and losing, between failure and success, between good and great, between dreaming and believing, between convention and innovation, between head and heart. It's a fine line. It challenges everything we do, and we ride it every day. So what happened? They started this team in 2010. David said, give me 5 years. In the next 6 years, they won the Tour de France 3 times with 2 different riders. 3 wins in 6 years. So an incredible success for a British team that had, for 100 years, never won the Tour de France. And all of it, not with the expensive, big name, superhero rider, but with an average rider and a good team, optimizing everything 1%. This is called the aggregation of marginal gains. And I think we all know it from Christmas, the inverse effect, where somebody is offering you a treat and you're like, well, it's just a piece of chocolate. What harm can it do? And you take it, and you make one little bad decision after another, and a month later you've gained 10 pounds. But it also works in the positive. If you improve everything 1% and you keep doing that all the time, eventually it amounts to a lot. So enough about cycling. But I think to sum it up, my takeaway from this, and not just from this story of cycling, but from my work also in the past with lots of entrepreneurs and in my own work, is that we generally overestimate the value of the grand gesture, of the big idea, the big innovation, the thing that will be a huge success. But we also completely underestimate the value of super small actions that are done consistently over time. And I always think of that guy putting less paint on the bike, because it's stupid. But it's part of a mindset of saying, well, every little thing counts if we just keep doing that.
So before we get into the next stage, some people have written in great questions, and to the point of how do we optimize to those questions, I thought maybe we could share them now.
Yeah.
So I've just picked 3 of them. So if you have more things you want to continue to write in, we'll definitely be watching. But for now, I'm going to pick 3. The first is someone's really interested in asking the question, how can we create more sophisticated or exciting ways for young professionals to quote-unquote give? So be philanthropists from new perspectives. Another question is focused on diversity. So how do we create a diverse set of programs or different sets of approaches? How do we create different ways of measuring that are all most effective, but all work together, despite their differences, towards a shared outcome? And then another question that I thought was interesting, thank you for sharing, all of you who did, is not a specific kind of pie-in-the-sky question, but it's more of a process. And this person is saying they're very excited about exploring the question of whether or not the job that they're in is the right place for them. And in terms of this presentation today, how can side projects actually help answer that question?
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who shared questions. Again, if you want to keep adding them in, great. But just wanted to give a couple of headlines to help you out.
Awesome. So this is the setup to talk about side projects now. So again, overvalue the grand gesture. We underestimate the value of small actions done consistently. So let's talk about a few side projects. So a side project that I have been doing over the past 3 years or so is called the Think Clearly newsletter, or the Handwritten Goodness newsletter. And when I started out, it was actually like a full-time consulting thing I was doing, helping people. Oh, is that me? Oh, let's get that away. Perfect. Helping people, facilitating them visually to think in new ways. And people kept asking, like, why don't you do a newsletter? Why don't? And I was like, I don't want to do a newsletter. That's too marketing and like self-promoting, and it's too much work, and it's not the work that I want to do anyway. So I was resistant for a long time, but then eventually I changed the question from like, should I do a marketing newsletter to make myself more successful, to being like, well, if I am to do a newsletter, how will I make a newsletter that feels aligned with who I am, how I work, and where it doesn't feel like work to be doing it? So you can see here it's handwritten because that's how I write my own notes, and that's an activity that I thoroughly enjoy. So now, now, 3 years later, it has become the signature kind of feature of the newsletter. But in the beginning, it really was just because it saved me time, and it allowed me to sit in a cafe without internet and write my newsletter by hand, and instead of spending a lot of time typing it up and making it polished, I just took a photo of it and sent it out raw. And even if there were typos and mistakes, like, I left it all in there as it was. I didn't rewrite them. And initially, for me, what I set out to do was really, I wanted to make a newsletter that was for one friend of mine that I knew would appreciate, because he had been pushing me to do it. So I thought of him as like, I'm writing it for him. If anybody else wants to read it too, fine, but it's really for him. So it wasn't for like an ambiguous audience, or like, I wasn't writing for a lot of people. I was writing for one guy, and then for myself. I wanted some of these ideas to be captured in a way where I would over time build kind of an archive of ideas. So that's what I set out to do. The first couple of issues had 20, 30, eventually 40, 50 readers. I kept doing it. Eventually I cheated a little bit, and I imported all my LinkedIn contacts. A lot of them unsubscribed the first time I sent something to them, but some people stuck around. And it has been growing slowly ever since, and has today become a big thing for me, even though that was never the intent. It currently has 9,000 subscribers, and it grows almost 1,000 subscribers every month. So it has completely taken off. So I'm curious, when you hear about a side project like this, and this is the first poll, how much time do you think that I spent making each issue in the beginning? Like, when I first started out 3 years ago, it was completely new. I was doing this. How much time do you think I spent beginning making these issues? We'll just give it about a minute as you are putting in your answer. I'm just curious to see what you expect. For a project that now is a consistent, huge, and powerful audience for me, how much time did I invest? I can say also for reference, I sent them initially every single week, but I would take kind of time off over the holidays and in the summer, so it had like a semester cycle, a little bit like a school. There would be a fall semester and a spring semester.
If there are any last photos, you're going to close in 5 seconds. All right.
Oh, completely even distribution here. Some people, so no clear actually sense.
No clear winner.
No clear winner. So actually, in the beginning, I would say I spent about 3 hours back, like in total, making each newsletter. I had the time back then, and they were longer than what you see on the screen here in the background. They were yeah, just a longer page. And I did do some Photoshop retouching to make them look a little bit nicer. Took some time in MailChimp. So now I'm curious, since it has grown now and the stakes are so much higher, there are now, again, 9,000 recipients and not 50. How much time do you think I spent making each issue now? More time, less time? I think, yeah, you put up the poll. Am I investing more time because it's more people reading it, or less time because I'm getting better at it? Let's see what people think. Let's give it another 10, 15 seconds. Cool. So I guess you guessed almost correctly. Definitely less time. I would say it also varies, of course, but there are times where I sit down for an hour and I will write 3. And then it takes maybe 10 minutes per issue to get it into the email system. So I estimate each issue to take me about 25 minutes. So cool. Thanks for that. I think for me, I wanted to ask this just to see where you are and what your perception is of this, because I think I would have a natural tendency, and I would have expected of myself that it was scrappy in the beginning, and then as it got bigger, that I would be willing to invest more time. And I actually think that it has hugely helped this project, that I've gotten more efficient at it, because it allows me to keep doing it. It doesn't feel like work. It feels easy. It feels effortless. Yeah. So I recommend that also for projects. Like, even if you spend more time in the beginning, like, you can actually optimize and get better at it, and that's okay. Another project that I recently did, and I think this is an example of how you can take the unexpected thing that happened after writing a newsletter for a while, which was, now that there was an audience, I made a deck of cards with reflection questions. You can see some of them here in the background. Questions like, how did it make me feel? Or what made me feel frustrated? And what were my most powerful insights? And then on the other side, they are sorted into categories, so 1, 2, 3, 4, to kind of help people pick questions in the right order.
Can you explain the scenario that someone used this in?
Actually, we'll do it a little bit in the end, so you'll get a sense of the reflection process actually in the end. But it was more like it's a product that kind of fits with the way of working in the newsletter. And then I launched it on Kickstarter. Or actually, I didn't launch it on Kickstarter. That's wrong. I decided first to make them. I made just 3 decks for myself, had them printed, spent $70 on printing the prototype, and I just took a photo of them when they arrived finally and put them on Instagram. And there were so many people. Usually I get most likes on Instagram when I post cute photos of my kids. And when I post things about work, it's like 10 people that give it a like and no comments. And this got like 10 comments with people that are like, can I buy them? I want them. Where can I get them? I mean, just 10 people, but still, relative to how little social interaction I normally get on Instagram, it was a lot. So it was like, people are actually interested in this. And then I kept capturing interest and sharing these on different social media, and eventually launched on Kickstarter and now sold 300 so decks. And so it's easy again to see this as like, oh, this was a successful project. It raised $10,000 on Kickstarter. But I don't think it matters how much I think, because I see this as only the beginning. This can be so much more. This is only version 1. And I don't think it matters that the initial Kickstarter was $10,000. I think it could have been a fabulous side project scale of $1,000 or even at $100. If I had sold 5 decks at $20 each to my neighbors and they were using them and talking about them and spreading the word, then you can do another one. So I think a big learning for me is that you can always make things bigger, but you can also always make them smaller, and that it doesn't matter. I found lots of examples of other Kickstarter decks where people had made like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars selling card decks on Kickstarter. So it's like, it doesn't matter. Find the appropriate scale, I guess, is my takeaway. And then one of the, I would say, most unsuccessful side projects that I've done from a commercial perspective is I began offering last year a chat coaching service where people could reach out with big issues in their life. They could reach out just on WhatsApp. I gave my phone number away, my direct message on Twitter, and ask me these questions. And it's not like therapy, like chat, talk space-ish, but I give people concrete exercises to do, a little bit like what we will do in the workshop now, but tailored to their challenges. They have to do the exercise in like 5 to 10 minutes and send me a photo back. And I guide them through multiple steps until they find their own solution. I've been doing this for about a year now. I think I've probably coached roughly 100 people. I mean, it's not a product. Nobody's paying for it. So it's like, in a way, it's like an unsuccessful side project that just was like an experiment that never really has become much. But in another way, it's hugely successful for me personally because it has been really, really fun to do. I have really felt like these random, unknown, unnamed, when it's on WhatsApp, I can see the country code of their phone number, but I don't even know their name, and it still feels intimate. Yes. So, and in some of the projects I'm potentially doing now, this actually is one of the example that I bring up every once in a while that actually resonates most with some of the people I'm talking to now. So it's something that I never expected would be useful, but just as an exploration, because I was curious as can I help people through chat?
So the thinking clearly was your core question. How can I help people think clearly? Yeah. And again, I think it's good that we ask people to consider that right now, but at the same time, I didn't know that when I started out. I was just doing a lot of work. The newsletter was called Ideas or Nothing for the first half year. And then eventually somebody's like, no, I think what you're doing is that you're helping people think clearly. It's like, oh, that's it. And I had to change, the brand and the name and all of that because it finally made sense to me. But you need to start with something. All right. So to sum this up, for me, I think a great side project is something that is designed to be as small as possible. The newsletter was a couple of hours of time every week, and it could have been every month. I don't think it would have mattered, but it could be done in small increments, and it still is. All of these things are done in small increments, half hour here, half hour there, but these increments build on each other. But most importantly, success for me is defined in terms of learning. So instead of what can I get, it's what can I learn? What can I learn from packing and shipping 300 decks of cards? I've learned a lot about USPS and how expensive it is to ship packages internationally. But now I know, and I won't forget for another project. Another way to sum it up is to say, do, raise, repeat. Do something small, raise the stakes, and repeat. So building on one thing, doing more things on top of that. All right, let's do a little bit of workshop. You'll need a pen, a piece of paper for this. And it's just to get you started thinking what could be a good side project.
for you. We'll do the workshop, a little bit of reflection in the end, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So try to draw this. Draw yourself as a little stick figure and I would say, let's call it a barrier, and your future self. And put some labels on, where are you now? What are you doing now? What is your current job? And what is kind of a next step in your career that you're interested in getting to? Or even if it's not the immediate next step, what is a step where there is kind of a boundary? I'll give you just 2 minutes, draw this out, and try to list what is the delta. That's what I've done here, the triangle. What is the difference? What are the skills? What are the skills and experiences that you need to land that job, that position? Just take 2 minutes now, draw this out, and try to write the delta, the differences.
And it doesn't have to be, a specific job. It could be very aspirational. Really, it's up to you. Thinking about, who would you be excited for your future self to be? There's no wrong answers.
No, that's an important one, actually. And if you don't know where to start, just draw what I've drawn here. It's a good way to break the ice and get the things flowing. Have about 30 seconds left. Just to give yourself some notes. Where are you now? Where would you like to be? And what is making up that hurdle, that gap, that obstacle? Excellent. So leave that for now. We can return to it later, but have it just as a frame of reference for later. Now take a new piece of paper, because we don't want to be restrained and just focused on the immediate career jump. But have it just in the back of your mind on a piece of paper to the side. Take a new piece of paper, draw a heart in the middle, and write something like passion ideas. And now give yourself, and I'll give you 2 minutes to just take all kinds of ideas for things you could actually do. I put 3 here that I would like to do: host a conference, cook Sunday meals for someone else, and do a wisdom exchange with people that are from different generations from my own. But just take 2 minutes now, write out as many big, small, crazy, impossible ideas. Banal ideas are great. Illegal ideas are great. Just things where you have some kind of passion. I would be interested in doing that. And don't be limited by, time available or resources available. Things you want to do. List them out, just like this. Next 2 minutes. See what comes out.
You can also be passionate about things at work if you're feeling, inspired to think about your workplace as a place where you can make big changes, maybe write down things that you don't think anyone is ready to do, but you'd love to see change.
Yeah.
Anything that you're excited about.
Have another 30 seconds. Just squeeze out a few more ideas just to have something. All right. Now we will do another poll. How much time do you guess that you have per week to dedicate to side projects right now? And I know that Game of Thrones is going right now, so that limits it a little bit, at least for me. But after Game of Thrones and other things that you must, Girls has finally ended, so that frees up some time, even though I miss it already. How much time do you have per week in your life between work and family and other obligations to dedicate to side projects? Ten seconds more? Oh, wow. So you actually have a lot of time. Like 2 hours is a lot. 3 hours you can do so much. And there are people that probably like me are a little overambitious or over optimistic also with their time. I tend to think that I have more time than I have, and I tend to think that things take less time than they actually do. But that's really, really good. So have that in mind now in this next step. What I would like you to do is to pick one of these ideas that you came up with, even if it's a big idea, like hosting a conference, or like a wisdom exchange. Like that could be done as a big thing. But how can you then make a small version of that? So pick one thing, give yourself just a minute, I'll give you 2 minutes. In my example here, it's that a wisdom exchange could be that I will find every week one person who's over 60 years old, so a different generation than me, talk to them for at least 5 or 10 minutes, ask them some questions, take a photo of them, and post that photo on Instagram with a quote from the conversation with them. That is something that I could do every week. It would take me less than 30 minutes to do, which is probably what I realistically have right now. And I would be able to do something that would build over time. So give yourself a minute and a half, pick one idea that you like, and try to find like what's the minimum thing you can do, small increments, week by week, with the time that you have available. If you think you have more than 5 hours, think of this still as something you can do with two hours a week. And really here, the smaller the better. The easier it is for you to do. It's almost like if it feels too easy, you're onto something. If it feels like, that's not even a real thing, that's because we're underestimating the value of doing it consistently over time. So many workplaces where it's rewarding, ambitious. Side projects, it usually backfires. You'll usually commit to something that is too hard to keep up. Take another 30 seconds. What could it be? So this was like 3 quick steps to get you thinking what could be a good project for you. And now I would just like you to reflect, going through these quick steps. Take 30 seconds and write your answer to these 2 questions. How did this feel? And what did I learn? Excellent. So as a summary, from my end, design your side projects to be as small as possible, do small increments, regular intervals that always build on each other. Define your success in terms of what you can learn. And what looks like a detour initially can be a shortcut, but also the reverse. So you can't judge it in advance. You can only see it in hindsight. And it's good to start with a clear intent. I want to host a conference. I want to do this, but always be open to see what it eventually becomes. Most importantly of all, we need to learn from this guy, Aristotle, and he says the things we need to learn, we learn by doing. So whatever it is, stop just thinking about it and begin doing it, even if it's like so small and feels so small that it's almost like cheating. Just begin doing and see what you can learn. And always ask yourself these 2 questions when you've done something. How did it feel? What did I learn? So I've included some sources and links that you can look at afterwards. You'll get the slides. But now we have some time for Q&A, and I'll leave Aristotle to stare at us while we do that.
Thank you, Mathias. I'm excited to see what questions people have. Please feel free to type your questions now into the question box. We have just a couple minutes left.
Also, I want to say, if you want comments or things specifically to the exercise steps you did, definitely just use the chat service. Like, send me a photo. It's all on my website to reach out to me, and I'm happy to comment on and help you get along with those steps. We only have so little time right now.
Yeah.
But definitely take me up on it for later.
So I'm excited, as people start to do these side projects, if you want to share what you're up to, even if it's just tiny little things, definitely feel free to send them to me, to biz@epip.org, so we can celebrate you and we can continue thinking about it. I know some people may want to think about how to test these questions on different roles. Maybe you sit down and have conversations with people to start thinking about where to begin. But one thing I really took away from this was I love the idea of everything just has to start with doing. I think sometimes we wait to have the right project or the right plan, and I'm hearing you emphasize the value of doing the thing before you doubt it and just jumping in.
And go the detour, because it might be a shortcut, even if it feels like the wrong project. There's something you will learn there.
Yeah.
So long as you're paying attention to the learnings and not the success or absence of success.
One quick question to that point, before I read the questions from the group. On the topic of getting unstuck, how did you sit down and come up with your first side project question? Did you make time? Did you plan? Did it come to you organically? What was your process of getting started?
Well, for example, with the newsletter, that should have been obvious from what I was doing, but it wasn't obvious to me. And it took 3 or 4 passionate people that over time tried to convince me to do it. And I think that's okay. Like sometimes you don't see the obvious thing in front of you. And for other things, no, I think for me it's always been somebody else actually that has said, like, even with the cards, that was a collaboration with somebody else. Those were questions that were taken out of my reflections in my own notebook, And then my friend Dave said, like, we should make a card deck out of these. It would never have occurred to me. But I ended up taking him up on the idea and actually making the card deck.
Cool.
Yeah.
We have a question that's very resonant for me, and I think is great to have Aristotle's photo up as I ask it. The question is from a person who's very passionate about a lot of things and is feeling stuck in that complex passion.
Yeah.
She said a lot of people will tell her just pick something and start, but she doesn't feel confident that one path will be the right one. So someone that's got a lot of things they're excited about, what is your recommendation to how to get in motion?
Well, I would say the same thing that he or she has already been getting, but since that has already been said, there's something else then that is holding it back. And I think it's often because we forget that life, is long. And if you have 10 different things you want to do over, right now, think about it as like the next 70 years of your life. That means that you can just plan it out and say, for the next 7 years, I am focusing on this thing. And I will still have plenty of time to give 7 years to all the other things.
Yeah. Do you ever explore multiple questions at one time?
Yeah, because sometimes you don't really know also what the question is. And I think the clarity, if you have too many things at once, I think it's also just trust that these things are connected, even if nobody else can see it. That was my experience for a long time, that people kept saying, like, Mathias, you're a mess, you're doing too many things, they're completely unconnected. And I was like, probably looks like that to you. I cannot explain how they are connected, but I think they are, or that they will connect eventually.
And have they?
I think so, yeah. But then other things, I forget about because they fell to the wayside, and I think that's okay. So also be gentle with yourself that you don't need to follow through on everything. It's more like trying things. And that's why it's so important to keep it small, because then you can also try more things. Small but consistent.
Someone who has a few side projects that are small and incremental, that are passion projects that the person's very excited about, but to your point, what you just said, feels very disconnected from the field of practice where the person is working.
Yeah.
Do you have ideas about how to help connect those dots?
It's a little hard to do in the abstract. I mean, I think there's always power, like the mind. Like, what you could do is like ask people, what is, like, instead of saying like, are these connected or not, and people will immediately be like, no, they're not, like they have nothing to do with each other. Think of like, well, what if they are, and push people a little bit more, like, and just say, how can you see a connection? Ask other people for that. But there is a power in believing that something, even if they aren't, that maybe they are. Maybe somebody else can see it from somewhere else. So I would probably invite other people to have a look at it.
Cool. And I think for some people are asking about like kind of getting over that threshold and started. So whether if you're at 0 or you already have lots of projects, but you're trying to add another layer, I would recommend that people go back to some of these diagramming exercises that were part of the workshop and think about kind of turning off the judgment part of your brain and turning on the flowing questions part of your brain, and just get a bunch out there and start to see what pops out to you on the page. To that point, we have a question about intimidation or kind of analysis paralysis. Again, I want to share a tip, and then I want to ask you to kind of close it out with your answer, and then we'll move on. But the question is, how do you deal with intimidation? I have a passion area and opportunities to get involved, but I'm intimidated to start. And I think there are lots of ways to overcome that, but I think one thing I've been trying to do more of is intimidation for me comes in the form of a little voice in my head that tells me I can't do something, or comes up with a very eloquent list of reasons why I shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I have been trying to practice telling that voice it's not its turn to talk. Yeah. So I would try and get some distance from the doubt and just see where you land. That's my recommendation for getting at least over that first step. But Mathias, for you, how do you deal with intimidation, or how do you think about,
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that it is real. I mean, it's so easy for somebody to give the recommendation like, don't be intimidated by it. It's like, but that's a bullshit suggestion, because if you experience it as real, and I certainly often experience that in some way or another. I think the hack that I try to do with myself is, because my intimidation is often around like, well, can I do it good enough? And I've succeeded at least a few times where I've said, well, there has to be somebody that tries to do this and does a really shitty job at it. And that person can be me. Like, I can be that person. And maybe I can serve the world by being the person who does it and screws it up. And that will then encourage someone else to jump in, because now they've seen that, oh man, like, he really screwed it up, but I have a better idea for how to do it. And maybe they were intimidated before, but seeing me fail at it kind of leaves them more safe to try. And then I have served the purpose still. And that, I think, often lowers the bar and the expectations for myself. I think that's how I tackle my own intimidation.
Cool. I like the idea of failure being valuable, and also I really love what you said about being gentle with ourselves. So. Yeah. Thank you. I know folks have to go. We want to respect your time. Do you have any closing remarks before we close out?
I really enjoy being here. I have not done that many webinars. It's weird to not be able to. I'm used to facilitating in the room, so it's weird so that I can't hear and see how you draw and what you do. And I'm really, really eager to see what you drew and where your minds went in this. So we'd really appreciate if you would take me up on my offer to help, or just share a photo of your notes after this and tag me. Twitter is really good for that, for me. It's THNKCLRLY. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you so much, Mathias. Thank you to everyone for your questions, for being willing to share some fears, some excitement, some possibilities. We are all excited to see what you test and try and succeed wonderfully at and fail wonderfully at. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, biz@epip.org. And we hope that you will complete the survey. We're eager to hear your feedback and join us for future webinars. So have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye.